one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about, especially with everything that happened just this week, is why does big tech support fake news? And I want to make a bigger argument here with, of course, covering some of the latest news, because I believe it is undeniable to see the bigger effects that fake news by the mainstream media is having on us. I think it's fair to say that the supposed libtards and conservatives are at each other more than ever because of activism journalism. And it feels more and more like our society is just diving into idiocracy because of people not caring about the facts, the issues, or even morals about exactly what is happening to us and reporting on it fairly. That is becoming more rarer by the day, but the hypocrisy that is exhumed, that is shown by these people, is also becoming more clearer by the day, as we saw today with Fareed Zakari, who actually did a live hit from Paris, France, specifically talking about how the government of Venezuela needed to be overthrown because of protests, with not one mention of the larger yellow vest movement that is happening down there, that is showing, as you've seen from my work on the ground there and other people's work, shocking police brutality on the hands of Emmanuel Macron, the Rothschild banker, that of course is trying to squash dissent in that country, where even we saw one of the leaders of the yellow vest movement having a horrific injury during yesterday's protest, where some people say he may now lose an eye. Many people have been maimed. Many people have been tear gassed indiscriminately because of their opposition to a leader. And then we have literally a CNN anchor, Fareed Zakari, standing on the scene where the violence has been happening for over 11 weeks. And he's telling us that we need to overthrow the Venezuelan government because of protests in that country. And of course, the establishment and the war hawks and the neocons, and even a big part of Trump's administration is just going along with that hypocrisy. They're not talking about Saudi Arabia. They're not talking about what's happening in Paris. But when it comes to Venezuela, yeah, let's actually talk about that, as we're seeing an intensified push by the Trump administration to oust Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, with Donald Trump even saying just recently that all options are on the table. And as we know, Donald Trump has even said military options are possible here when it comes to U.S. intervention in Venezuela. And again, if you've been watching any of my work, I am definitely not a fan of Maduro. I am definitely not a fan of the Venezuelan government, as I went to Venezuela and documented the horrors that are caused by government there. The horrors of just huge no gun signs, no smoking areas, huge permits everywhere in a country that has been destroyed by not only just sanctions, but horrible decisions by the government that prioritized gun-free zones and no smoking areas over, of course, it becoming the number one murder capital in the world, which is absolutely insane, especially with the private security guards that they disarmed. They ultimately disarmed the people and became the murder capital of the world. And of course, not a fan of Maduro, but I'm also not a fan of U.S. interventions, because look at any country that has gone through intervention, they didn't come off well off from it, especially with all the right-wing and also dictators that the United States historically has established throughout Latin America, which have turned out to not really help the country and created a lot of the issues that are leading to the immigration debate in the United States. Another important factor. But of course, Maduro is answering back by going to, of course, his allies. His main allies are, of course, Cuba, Bolivia, China, Russia, with Russia even sending their own security contractors to Venezuela in order to guard Nicolas Maduro, to make sure that there is not some kind of coup d'etat revolution that will overthrow him. The Bank of England is also refusing to release Venezuela's gold, which some people estimate is close to $1.2 billion. And there's a lot of crap that, of course, we are not hearing by the mainstream media about this very, very important issue. And again, on one hand, we have the mainstream media establishment telling you that Donald Trump is colluding with the Russians, that there's some clear collusion. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and the United States geopolitically have been butting heads with Russia. And Donald Trump has even gone as far as to even provide lethal weapons to Ukraine, right next to Russia, located in that key geopolitical position, something that, of course, Barack Obama never even dared to do. Donald Trump has many times, time and time again, pushed and overstepped his boundaries and become more war hawkish, especially against Russia, than a lot of his predecessors, and has been more aggressive. But yet again, we're still hearing that this story is all about Russian collusion, which again just pinpoints more of the hypocrisy. And now, honestly, the term Russian collusion, it's pretty much like the new political 9/11. They use it for everything right now. Just like we saw Giuliani say 9/11 when it came to the debate on war, on torture, on spying, on destroying freedom here in the United States. Giuliani and other war hawks just said 9/11. We're seeing the same excuses now being used for Russian collusion, which, of course, just like all the other hypocritical lies, are flat out wrong. And the United States and Russia are at odds with each other geopolitically and will continue to be at odds with each other. And that odd is increasing because of Donald Trump, not only with what's happening in Venezuela, in Ukraine, but also other key geopolitical points like Syria that a lot of people don't like to talk about. Now, of course, this leads me to talk about the next big thing about this whole Russian collusion story that proves that it's absolutely hooey and full of crap. And that is, of course, the recent indictment and arrest of Roger Stone. That is proving that this entire case is just an entire circus. And even though Roger Stone, who is a political hack, who just loves attention, said on national television that he will not cooperate with the Mueller investigation, which is supposed to look into this Russian collusion, he's now actually saying that he may actually cooperate. We're also seeing Jerome Corsi, who also was indicted for making false statements. Again, no conspiracy, no Russian collusion, no proof of any backdoor. Jerome Corsi also charged under this thing, saying that he would be happy to testify against Roger Stone. And the crimes that they're going to find against Roger Stone has nothing to do with Russia, as we, as an independent news organization that has been paying attention to him, have been calling him out for exaggerating the claims that he had and the connections that he supposedly had with WikiLeaks. And guess what? This indictment does not prove or establish any privileged access to WikiLeaks or coordination with WikiLeaks, and doesn't prove any direct collusion. But again, that doesn't matter, because people who follow the mainstream media, people who are zombified, will still believe it in some way. But we've been calling it out here for a while, because Roger Stone has been making very exaggerated claims time and time again about this very specific issue that we've been calling him out again. And we're in trouble where a well-known lobbyist who pretty much deceives people in the name of money and power, a major political hack who just tries to be infamous. We're in trouble when this guy is more trustworthy than the supposed most trusted name in news, CNN, that is ultimately pushing this bigger lie. And again, Roger Stone's indictment does not prove Russian collusion at all. It's a political wish hunt. It's, again, Russiagate, this whole Russian collusion term used as a political weapon. And if you just don't even believe it now, look what is happening to people like Bernie Sanders, where we're having mainstream media journalists, a journalist from Wired and also a writer for the Los Angeles Times, came out and said that Bernie Sanders is supposedly a Russian agent. We're seeing other mainstream media pundits talking about how they should have never even covered the DNC email leak. We saw CNN tell its viewers it's illegal to read WikiLeaks documents. We see these lies time and time again for their favorite establishment puppets that go along with their collectivist programming and bigger special interests that they serve. And the queen of all of this is, of course, Hillary Clinton, which even the Daily News is reporting now may actually run for president again in 2020. We saw Bernie Sanders in the news just yesterday because it came out that he most likely will run to be president. And now it looks like Hillary Clinton will as well, to the chagrin and happiness of a lot of these establishment journalists who, of course, want to keep pushing these bigger lies onto you. And that's why when Donald Trump says, quote, axe falls quickly at BuzzFeed and Huffington Post, headline New York Post, fake news and the bad journalism have caused a big downturn. Sadly, many others will follow. The people want the truth. When Donald Trump says this, he again shows you a bigger political rift that is happening, not amongst the people and the establishment, but a part of the establishment against the other part of the establishment. And when he mentions this, he is correct. Even though a lot of people are responding saying, oh, how dare he say this? How will other journalists be able to pay for their rent and their families and their student loans? It's horrible that over 1,000 people lost their jobs. And honestly, with the recent layoffs that have been happening in media, there's a term here that is pretty important here. That's live by the sword, die by the sword. And when we look at the establishment media, with them demanding respect now when they haven't given us any, they haven't given the people any amounts of respect at all, you have to wonder, what the hell are they thinking? Now, of course, I am generalizing here, and there might have been some individuals that actually did a good job and were honest human beings and were reporting on things honestly. But by and large, I think the general public agrees that the journalists, especially the ones being fired now, were absolutely filled with crap, and they deserve no sympathy because they've shown no sympathy or respect towards the people that they have been attacking with fake news, with, of course, their larger attacks on beheads of special interest against people, dividing and conquering them, making everyone fight against each other. And you have to understand, with the bigger story that needs to be talked about here, is that a lot of these journalists, they were pretty much paid way too much for very little work that they were doing. Now, of course, some journalists were working very hard, but a lot of them were sitting around and getting paid way too much. And I think a lot of people, if you would see the life of an average kind of mainstream media journalist, would be confused about why they were getting paid in the first place, especially with the garbage that they were putting out there. Many of them have a lot of substance abuse problems. A lot of them, pundits that I personally met and hung out with, are either raging alcoholics or just serious drug addicts, mostly predominantly popping pharma pills to quiet themselves down to the reality that they work for corporate special interests and not for the people, and they have to charade and pretend like they actually are. Now, they obviously are a bigger gang and an institution within themselves that refuse to hold each other accountable because, again, power takes care of power. Conglomerates and consolidation of power make sure that it is safe amongst itself. And that's why we're seeing so many interests taking care of each other. That's why I wanted to bring up this kind of NBC story, which is titled 4chan Trolls Flood Laid Off HuffPo BuzzFeed Reporters with, quote, death threats. Now, this is a very interesting article because it's a reporter who's impacted by this story, Ben Collins, who is complaining and trying to get big tech to take action because of the public's reaction to them not doing a good job. And obviously, sending out death threats can't be condoned here. This shouldn't happen. It sadly does happen. I receive them. I know, Jason, you probably do. Anyone online pretty much receives death threat. It shouldn't be condoned. But a lot of people have legitimate grievances against the mainstream media, and it's always the mainstream media journalists running to the big tech companies, asking them to be the decider of what is truthful and to do their bidding. And of course, they will keep doing that. And what this NBC author did is completely wrong. And that's why it's interesting to see even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweet something that is truthful about this situation, which is absolutely mind-boggling, where I'm explaining a situation where I could say Donald Trump and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are both truthful here. And she says, quote, Gonna keep it 100. The biggest threats to journalism right now are tech monopolies and concentrations of ownership. And she is completely right about that, which is absolutely shocking, because if you look at the bigger issues here, why does big tech support fake news? Well, it supports them because a lot of the big media industries are consolidated. There's pretty much 5 conglomerates that have a control on the majority of mass media. When you look at the tech industry, it is mostly consolidated. But of course, there's overlapping people who sit on boards who have control of both industries. And this is where we see a lot of collusion, but also big tech and mainstream media ultimately serving special interests, which are usually big money or big government. And that's why they need to be supportive of each other, because if big tech and big media didn't collude together, they would be threatened by, of course, their biggest adversary, which is truth. This is why tech companies like Google and Facebook collude with the mainstream media, because they understand they need the public's attention. They need to work together. It's an important power dynamic that needs to be understood here, because if people understood how horrible Facebook and Google and all these other big industries are, they would stop using them. They would ultimately say, I'm not going to be a part of this big tech industry that is taking advantage of me, that is lying to me, that is selling my private information, that is using my own weaknesses against me, that is using psychological tricks, that is using gambling techniques in order to get me addicted, that physically make you sick, that make you depressed, that show to have horrible negative consequences on your life. The tech industry needs the fake news. The fake news needs the tech industry. And that's why we're seeing YouTube just recently announced that they're going to be censoring any form of conspiracies on their platform. And of course, guess what? This is not a new announcement by YouTube. They've been doing it, and they've been doing it to this channel, and they've been doing it to other independent media, because guess what? We're not consolidated, and we're a bigger threat to all of these bigger conglomerates. And that's why they are terrified, and that's why we're seeing a big blowback with not only YouTube, but with Twitter, with Facebook, still understanding that the fake mainstream media still holds a lot of influence, and that they need to coexist with each other, because if they don't, they both will fall because of that one big determining factor, which of course is the truth here. So spread this video. Don't fall for this Russian collusion. Don't fall for this fake narrative of the fake news. What really is happening here is 2 big industries that are denying facing the reality and the consequences of the horrible actions that they committed against us. And it's only a matter of time until all of those cards fall. We're seeing it fall a little bit this week, but guess what? It's only going to get worse with that. And also expect more censorship of alternative voices who are bringing you these bigger truths. That's why you guys need to sign up on our email list on wearechange.org more than ever, because again, like I've been saying, our time on this platform is very limited.